Imagine stepping out to feed your horses and spotting fresh claw marks on the feed shed. Marks so deep you know they can't be from any local animal. That's when a wild thought hits. Could my own HOA have planted a bear here to scare me off my land? Sounds crazy, right? But stick with me, because the trail of broken locks, strange meat deliveries, and whispered boardroom jokes all point to one thing. The people who were supposed to keep our neighborhood safe turned into full-on villains. I'm talking about board members who went from writing petty warning letters to dabbling in wildlife crime, all to push my family out. By the time the sheriff's office closed in, every smug grin on that board had vanished, replaced by the cold dread that comes when you learn jail time is on the table. Before we dive into the chaos, tell me in the comments, have you ever tangled with an HOA gone mad? A few years back, I moved into a quiet little ranch that had been in my family for a while. It wasn't fancy, just a stretch of land with open skies, a small red barn, and enough space to breathe. We had a couple of horses, some chickens, and a garden out back where my mom used to grow tomatoes in the summer. It was the kind of place where the silence actually felt good. You'd hear crickets at night, not traffic. When I bought the property, I knew there was an HOA attached to the area, but I was told they mostly handled trash pickup schedules and lawn signs. Nothing major. Nobody warned me that behind that quiet name on the mailbox, there were people ready to cause real damage. Back then, though, it just felt like home. Safe. Comfortable. A place to reset my life and maybe pass on to the next generation someday. If I'd known what was coming, I would have taken pictures of that peaceful view every day, because it didn't stay that way for long. The first time I heard from the HOA was through a woman named Patricia. She was the president of the board. Early 60s, sharp voice, always walking around with a clipboard like she was running a boot camp instead of a neighborhood. One morning she stopped by while I was fixing a fence and said I was causing wildlife disruption. I didn't even know what that meant. I thought maybe she was talking about my dog, who sometimes barked when deer got too close to the barn. I laughed it off, thinking she was just being dramatic. But 2 days later, I got a formal letter in the mail from the HOA. It said I was officially being warned for violating community rules and needed to correct the issue immediately. What issue? It didn't even explain anything clearly, just a bunch of vague words that made it sound worse than it was. I remember thinking, all right, maybe they're just sticklers for peace and quiet. Maybe if I keep things calm, it'll all blow over. At the time, I had no idea this was only the beginning, and Patricia had much bigger plans. It didn't stop with just that first letter. Over the next few weeks, I started getting more notices from the HOA, fast. One said I was attracting invasive species because I had a few fruit trees near the back fence. Another one claimed my compost pile was unregulated organic waste, whatever that's supposed to mean. They made it sound like I was building a landfill back there, but I kept my place clean. No trash, no noise, nothing out of line. Then things took a sharp turn. One morning, I went out to feed the animals and saw that the latch on my feed shed had been busted clean open. At first, I thought maybe a raccoon or coyote had gotten bold. But then I saw the claw marks, deep ones, scratched into the wood. Way too big for a raccoon. That same week, my trail cam picked up something that made my stomach drop. A full-sized bear, sniffing around the barn like it owned the place. That made no sense. We don't get bears out here. I called animal control, and even they were confused. No reports of bears, no known activity. That's when the thought hit me hard. This wasn't some wild animal wandering in. This was planned. This was someone trying to scare me off. That's when I knew this wasn't nature. This was sabotage. After that bear showed up on camera, I stopped messing around. I upgraded my trail cams, added 2 more near the barn, and set one facing the road just in case. At the same time, I started looking into the HOA itself, who was running it, what kind of power they really had, and what they were hiding. That's when I found something that stopped me cold. Patricia, the HOA president, used to run a private wildlife education center years ago. She had owned exotic animals before, including, you guessed it, bears. That wasn't listed anywhere on the HOA site, but it came up in an old news article I found through a deep web search. Around the same time, one of my neighbors quietly told me they'd seen odd deliveries being dropped off at Patricia's house. Stuff like big metal crates and what looked like slabs of raw meat packed in ice. When I asked to see the HOA board meeting notes, they said I wasn't allowed. Internal business, they called it. That didn't sit right. If everything was above board, why hide it? I filed a formal complaint with the county, and Animal Control agreed to open a case. I didn't have proof yet, but in my gut, I knew this was no coincidence. Something bigger was going on, and Patricia was at the center of it. One morning, I woke up to a bright orange notice nailed to my gate. It was from the HOA. According to them, my ranch was now under review for community removal because I was allegedly putting neighbors in danger. The reason? The bear. They were actually trying to flip the whole situation and blame me for the problem they created. That's when I lost it. I grabbed my phone, hit record, and walked straight to the HOA office, which is really just a converted garage next to Patricia's house. I asked her point blank, on camera, why she was letting this happen. Why she was importing predators to push me out. At first, she tried to act confused, but the more I pressed, the more her mask slipped. A few neighbors started showing up once they saw the camera. Word had spread that something was going down. That's when one of the newer board members, who clearly wasn't on the inside, said something that blew it wide open. They muttered, "This is what happens when you try to solve the ranch problem the natural way." Just like that, in front of everyone, you could feel the air change. People started whispering, pointing, stepping back. Patricia's face went pale. I kept recording. Because now, it wasn't just about my ranch anymore. Now it was proof. And that changed everything. After that confrontation, I didn't waste another minute. I called an attorney and filed a full police report. I handed over the trail cam footage, the letters, and everything I'd dug up. Animal Control got back to me a few days later with something big. They confirmed the bear caught on my cameras didn't match the kind of wildlife found in our area. Not even close. It had markings and behavior that lined up with captive animals, not wild ones. A few days later, more info came in. One of the HOA board members had connections to a shady exotic animal dealer across state lines. That's when the sheriff's department got involved. It didn't take long after that. They showed up with warrants, and by the end of the week, Patricia and 2 other board members were arrested. Real charges: animal endangerment, conspiracy, criminal trespass, and possibly even attempted manslaughter, because if that bear had attacked someone, it could have ended much worse. When they searched their homes, they found gloves, meat coolers, and equipment made for handling large animals. The whole thing read like a bad movie script. But it was real. And now the same people who tried to drive me out were sitting in jail cells, waiting for their day in court. When the trial came around, I showed up with everything. Photos, videos, documents, even recordings of that board meeting mess. I took the stand and told the whole story, start to finish. I wasn't scared anymore. I wanted every lie out in the open. After the case made the news, the state stepped in and shut the HOA down completely. No more fake rules, no more power games. The community was placed under state review, and my ranch? Finally safe. A few of the board members got hit with serious time, years in prison. The others, the ones who didn't get their hands quite as dirty, took plea deals and agreed to never be part of any HOA again, anywhere. Some neighbors who had backed Patricia in the beginning packed up and left. The rest? They started waving when they saw me, said they were sorry. told me I did the right thing. It felt weird, but it also felt good to know I stood my ground. I even put up a little sign on the gate as a joke. Bear free since 2024. Every time I walk past it, I smile a little. What they tried to do nearly broke me, but in the end, they lost everything. And I kept what mattered. I never thought buying a quiet little ranch would lead to police reports, courtrooms, and a bear wandering through my barn. When I first moved in, all I wanted was some space and peace. Instead, I ended up facing a group of people who thought they could scare me into giving it all up. It started with one petty warning and turned into a full-blown criminal case. Looking back, I'm just glad I kept records, stayed calm, and didn't let them push me around. If there's anything I learned, it's this. Always know your rights, always keep proof, and don't stay quiet when something feels off. You never know what people will do when they think no one's watching. Now I want to hear from you. What's the weirdest or most unfair thing an HOA has ever tried to pull on you or someone you know? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. And if you made it this far, hit that like button, share this with someone who's had their own HOA nightmare, and subscribe for more stories that prove truth really is stranger than fiction.